Imagine riding alone through the Wild West and finding the one person you were never meant to save. A single decision, one wounded stranger, and a cowboy's life is changed forever. This is not just a love story. It's a story of courage, sacrifice, and a heart that chose mercy over survival. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who loves powerful Western stories. And don't forget to comment below. Tell us what you would have done if you were in his place. Now take a deep breath, saddle up, and let's start this story. The sun burned low over the Arizona plains, stretching long shadows across the cracked earth as Ethan Cole rode alone through the open range. Dust clung to his coat, his face hard from years of survival, his eyes trained to notice danger before it noticed him. The frontier had shaped him into a man who trusted only his horse and his rifle. He had buried friends, outlived enemies, and learned that mercy was a luxury few could afford. That evening felt no different, until his horse suddenly slowed, sensing something wrong ahead. Near a shallow creek, the signs of violence were unmistakable. Broken arrows, trampled grass, and dark stains marked a struggle that had ended badly. Ethan dismounted, his hand resting on his revolver, scanning the area with sharp caution. Then he saw her. She lay half hidden among the reeds, her body still, her dark hair spread across the dirt. An arrow wound cut deep into her side. She was Apache and very much alive, though barely. In that moment, Ethan understood the danger completely, and still, he knelt beside her. Her eyes snapped open with sudden fire, even through pain. She tried to move, her hand searching for a weapon that wasn't there. Ethan raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm, though he knew his words meant nothing to her. For a long breath, they stared at each other, two enemies shaped by history locked in silence. Then her strength gave out and her eyes closed again. Ethan exhaled, realizing he had already crossed a line there was no returning from. He worked quickly, tearing cloth from his shirt to bind her wound. Every second felt stolen from fate itself. Apache territory was not a place a white cowboy survived by accident. Lifting her onto his horse, he felt the weight of his choice settle into his bones. The ride to his remote cabin was slow and tense. His senses stretched thin, expecting pursuit at any moment. Yet none came. The land held its breath as he carried her home. Inside the cabin, Ethan cleaned the wound carefully, his hands steady despite the storm in his mind. He fed her water, kept the fire low, and stayed awake through the night, listening to her breathing. Memories haunted him, faces of people he failed to save, lives lost to cruelty and timing. He told himself this was different. He told himself he would let her go once she was strong enough. Still, when dawn arrived, he found himself hoping she would open her eyes again. When she did, the fear returned sharper than before. She sat up too fast, pain forcing a gasp from her lips. Her eyes scanned the cabin, landing on Ethan with suspicion and anger. She reached for a knife on the table, but her strength failed her. Ethan spoke calmly, slowly, explaining even though he knew she couldn't understand. He stepped back, giving her space, letting his actions speak louder than language. After a long silence, she lowered her gaze, exhaustion overtaking fear. Days passed with careful distance between them. She healed slowly, moving with quiet strength even while wounded. Ethan learned her name was Naya, spoken softly but with pride. Communication came through gestures, shared tasks, and long silences that felt heavier than words. She helped grind herbs, cleaned the cabin, and watched the land with the eyes of someone raised to read every sign. Ethan noticed how she never wasted movement, how every action had purpose. At night, they sat by the fire, separated by shadows. Ethan spoke of his past, not expecting her to understand but needing the release. He talked about losing his parents to bandits, about growing up too fast, about becoming a man who survived by never needing anyone. Naya listened, her expression unreadable, yet her presence felt like understanding. When she spoke of her own loss, of her tribe scattered and her family killed, pain passed between them without translation. The bond grew despite every reason it shouldn't. Ethan found himself watching for her steps, noticing when she smiled faintly, feeling an unfamiliar warmth settle into his chest. Naya, too, softened in small ways, accepting food from his hands, trusting him with her back turned, sleeping without fear under his roof. Neither spoke of what waited beyond the cabin walls. The outside world, with its hatred and bloodshed, felt distant, almost unreal. That illusion shattered the morning smoke rose on the horizon. Naya saw it first. Her body tensed instantly, her eyes sharp with recognition. Apache scouts. She knew the signs as well as Ethan knew gunfire. If they followed her trail, they would find the cabin. And when they did, there would be no mercy. Ethan reached for his rifle, instinct taking over. But Naya stopped him with a single look. Violence would only seal his fate. Before dawn the next day, she packed quietly. Ethan woke to the sound of the door opening, his heart dropping as he understood her choice. She meant to leave, to draw danger away from him. He followed her into the pale light, calling after her, his voice breaking with emotion he didn't know how to control. She turned, tears shining in her eyes. And for the first time, fear was not what he saw there, but love mixed with sorrow. She touched his chest once, a silent goodbye, and stepped back into the wild. Ethan stood frozen, realizing too late that saving her life had cost him something far greater than safety. As her figure disappeared into the land, the sound of distant hoofbeats echoed faintly across the plains, carrying with them the promise of a reckoning that neither of them could escape. The first gunshot cracked the morning silence like a warning from fate itself. Ethan spun toward the sound, his heart hammering as dust rose in the distance. Apache riders crested the ridge, their silhouettes sharp against the sky. They were fast, disciplined, and close enough that running was no longer an option. Ethan mounted his horse without hesitation and rode hard in the direction. Naya had gone, every instinct screaming that this moment would decide everything. He found her near the canyon's edge, standing tall despite exhaustion, her chin lifted in defiance as the riders closed in from both sides. She had stopped running because she understood the truth. Escape was impossible. When she saw Ethan, her eyes widened, anger and fear colliding. She tried to motion for him to leave, to save himself while there was still time. Ethan shook his head. He dismounted slowly, stepped forward, and placed himself between her and the approaching warriors. The Apache circled them in silence, bows drawn, rifles steady. Their leader rode forward, his face hardened by years of war and loss. His gaze moved from Ethan to Naya, sharp and questioning. Words were spoken in a language Ethan did not understand, but the tone carried judgment and accusation. Naya answered, her voice steady but emotional, explaining what had happened, why she had been with this white man, why she was alive. When the leader looked at Ethan again, the air felt heavy enough to crush him. Ethan removed his gun belt and dropped it to the ground. Then he raised his hands, palms open, and spoke clearly, loudly, knowing honesty was his only weapon. He said he found her wounded. He said he saved her life. He said he expected no reward and feared no punishment. If blood was demanded, he offered his own. The circle tightened. Time slowed. Ethan felt the weight of every choice he had ever made pressing down on him. He thought of the quiet nights by the fire, of the way Naya looked at the land like it was part of her soul, of how saving her had made him feel human again. If this was the price, he would pay it without regret. The Apache leader dismounted and approached. He studied Ethan closely, searching for deception. Then he turned to Naya and spoke again. Her shoulders trembled as she answered, tears finally spilling free. She spoke of kindness given without demand, of wounds healed instead of exploited, of a man who chose mercy when hatred would have been easier. Silence followed, thick and uncertain. At last the leader raised his hand. The weapons lowered. Ethan exhaled for the first time since the riders appeared. The leader spoke slowly, his voice carrying authority. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning when the leader gestured for Naya to step forward. She hesitated, looking back at Ethan, fear flashing across her face. Then she walked to her people. Ethan expected the end to come then. Instead, the leader turned back to him and nodded once, a gesture of respect. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. They would not kill him. He had honored their blood by saving one of their own. But mercy had limits. Naya could not stay with him. The world they lived in would never allow it. The riders prepared to leave. Naya stood beside her people, her face torn with emotion. Ethan took a step toward her, then stopped. He knew this goodbye carried more weight than words ever could. She crossed the distance between them one last time and pressed her forehead to his chest. No language was needed. In that moment, both understood the truth. They had changed each other forever. She whispered something in her tongue, something that sounded like a promise and a farewell combined. Then she turned away. Ethan watched as she mounted a horse and rode off with the tribe, her figure growing smaller until it blended into the endless land. When the last rider disappeared, the silence returned, deeper than before. Days passed, then weeks. Ethan returned to his cabin, but it no longer felt like home. Every corner held her memory, the herbs she had gathered, the place she sat by the fire, the quiet strength she carried into his life. The land seemed emptier now, as if it too mourned her absence. He tried to return to his old routines, but the man he had been no longer existed. Rumors spread across the frontier of a cowboy spared by the Apache, of a woman who spoke his name with respect among her people. Some called it foolishness. Others called it a miracle. Ethan didn't care what they believed. He carried his truth in silence. One evening, months later, as the sun sank low once again, Ethan stood outside his cabin and watched the horizon burn gold and red. For a brief moment, he thought he saw a familiar figure on a distant ridge. His heart leapt before reason could stop it. But the figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving only wind and memory behind. Ethan smiled faintly, not in sadness, but in acceptance. He had saved her life, and in return he had lost his heart. Yet he did not regret it. Some loves were not meant to be kept. Some were meant to be felt once, deeply enough to last a lifetime. And out there somewhere beneath the same wide sky, he knew Naya was alive, strong, and free. That knowledge was enough.